And we're live. Good afternoon and welcome to the February 7th, 2024 meeting of the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees Governance Committee. The meeting is being held in person with some committee members participating remotely. At this time, I will conduct a roll call attendance to determine if a quorum is present. Please clearly respond present via WebEx or present in person when your name is called. I am Courtney Nicolato and I am present via WebEx. Vice Chair Jay Placencia.
Present via WebEx.
Charles Fogarty.
Present via WebEx.
Monica Garnis. Matthew Lenz.
Present via WebEx.
Joseph Matthews. Robert Wagan.
Present via WebEx.
David Caprio. And President Mark Perlange. A quorum is present. We also recognize and acknowledge Board Chair Margot Cook and Vice Chair Armand Sabatoni, who are also present and participating as invited guests. To reminder to all members, for the benefit of our audience and the note taker, please clearly identify yourself whenever you comment, make a motion, or a second to a motion. Participants using WebEx are required to keep their cameras on, as remote members and all persons present at the meeting location must be visible, audible to each other. I'd also recognize Joe Matthews is joining us. Welcome, welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that the University of Rhode Island occupies the traditional stomping ground of the Narragansett Nation and the Niantic people. The first order of business is the approval of minutes. May I have a motion that the Governance Committee approve the minutes of October 26, 2023 committee meeting?
So moved, Jay Placencia.
Thank you, Jay.
Matt Lenz.
Thank you, Matthew. Let's see. I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion to approve the minutes of October 26, 2023 committee meeting is approved. The next item on the agenda is item number 2, discussion items. Item 2A is around conflict disclosure update. So as a reminder to the group, we talked about how can we best as a governance committee ensure if there are any conflicts or perceived conflicts that we as a committee can just be aware of them, and we can make sure that if board members need to abstain from votes or anything like that, that they would be, we would be giving them a heads up, or we can answer any questions that they may have. And so I want to thank Michelle and Alyssa as they've spent a lot of time pulling a conflict disclosure summary and information from the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. Everybody on the board is aware we complete a financial disclosure form every April. And so what we did from there is we were able to pull information that we would need. It is clear that there is sufficient information that's compiled each year by the state ethics code disclosures. So really no additional conflict questionnaires for the board are necessary. I think that the conflict form that we fill is more than sufficient. The summary is going to be used by the board secretary to identify any potential conflicts of interest for any transactions on the agenda prior to any committee and board meetings. The plan will be that Michelle will reach out to board members and let them know just what to expect. And of course, board members are also continue to be responsible for disclosing any conflict or potential conflict of interest with URI at the time of the potential transaction. And then finally, just to note that ethics training is planned for the February 16th board meeting. And that is preceding the next due date that we will all have to complete our state disclosure forms. So I feel good about where we're at, and I think it answers the call that we originally had as a governance committee to make sure that we were just well informed and that we could work with board members as situations come up. So any questions on the direction, any concerns? Okay. All right, thanks everybody. Item B is board goals and the development of KPIs, and I want to turn it over to Vice Chair Jay Placencia.
Very good. Thank you very much, Chair Nicolato. So not sure if many of you remember, but June last year, during our board meeting, we had discussion around how do we increase board participation, meaning, having us sort of do more together as a board, also to other activities, students and faculty, in essence, to increase our visibility with the university community. A few of the things that we talked about creating were KPIs or goals that were actually measured around, again, spending time with faculty, with staff, with students. So a few of these were, we've sort of talked about what kinds of things do we want to measure, what is the right measurement, what is the outcome is obviously increased participation, but a few of the things that we created, and they're not necessarily proved, but just wanted to sort of give you directionally where we're going. Things around, identifying what interests each of the board members might have. Michelle and Alyssa worked really hard at creating some of these activities, but we don't have an actual document yet to create. We want to make sure that the rest of the governance committee took a look at what we've created so far, gave us their input, and then we would present it to the board as a document for us to, I guess, in essence, approve. I'm not sure if we have to get them approved, Alyssa, or not, but a few of the items that we have created were around increasing participation at university events. Again, looking at our interests, looking at key events that were happening at the university throughout the year. The other item was around accessibility to students and faculty. So, inviting students, faculty to participate on committees or board meetings, receptions, campus visits, for us being present at recognition programs. So all these various things that we're sort of just putting our heads together around, making sure that we are, in essence, present, and that the students and faculty and, they see us as part of the university community. And the final piece was really around looking at the strategic plan and how do we take pieces of that and incorporate it into the board expectations, and also these KPIs that we're going to start measuring. So once we have this document in place, we're going to share with the rest of the governance committees for comment. Courtney and I think we sort of have reviewed, and I wanted to just publicly thank Michelle Query for her hard work in gathering all this information for us. We're going to have a really good document to share with you guys, and I think you'll be happy to see how we will be measuring how closer we get to our university community. Anything that I missed, Michelle or Courtney, or? Nope.
I think yeah, so more to come. So I think the plan will be to get this out to the board governance committee via email shortly, so you can take a look, and then we'll make sure we have space for folks to provide any comments that they have, and then we'll get this in front of the governance committee formally to move forward.
And any ideas that you may have in preparation for this thing, feel free to shoot it out to Michelle or Courtney and I, because I think, again, the idea is to make sure that we are closer as a board, as people, right? But also that we are close to the students and and faculty. So that's, again, so they know that we're reachable.
Yeah.
All right. So that is my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Joe, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Courtney. Jay, one thing that I'm seeing in activities, for example, in healthcare, is we call it advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a component. We talk about advocacy in our community, but we also have to represent up at the State House.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could also, I know that's going on, but there are certain areas that I think that might be something, if that's not in the mix yet, is some acknowledgement of, I know there's a URI day, I think whenever it is, March or April, that we're being asked to go up there. But there are things like that. I mean, every trustee gets run through the education committee.
Yep.
So there's an opportunity to make 6 or 7 friends.
Right. Right.
So I'm just saying that, and that's part of helping introducing deans or all those things. So just something to keep in mind is this concept of advocacy.
No, I love it. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would love to quantify that, Joe, to your point, because I do think we're spending a lot of time as board members in that, doing that effort already. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to continue to expand on it. So it'd be interesting as we think about our goals, how we quantify that, because I think it's measurable for sure.
Yeah, and I think, at the end, we want obviously for us to increase, but what exactly is that? Like, how do we measure what that looks like?
Yeah, exactly.
So we're trying to figure that out at this point, but
Yeah,
Thanks, Jay.
thanks.
awesome. Any other thoughts or comments? All right. Thanks, everybody, and thank you, Jay, for taking the lead on this and moving it forward. I appreciate it. I know I owe you comments, and so I will commit to doing that this week. All right, item 2C is board appointments update. We've made a lot of strides over the last few months. I want to thank everybody who has, really worked hard to make that happen. We had a number of us who were up for renewal and are working through the process. So trustees Garnis, Fascitelli, Fogarty, and Matthews have been reappointed, and they were reappointed on January 25th with a February 1st, 2027 term end date. So congratulations, and you continue the good fight with us. We look forward to continue working with you. There's a few other that are up for reappointments, and those are in progress right now. And we know Michelle and I were just talking that traction has been made in just getting that in front of the Senate Education Committee. And so those should happen in the next couple of weeks. And we believe the one pending is the Speaker of the House's selection. And so that will, and from what we understand, should be moving as well. So we're hopeful by the time we meet in a few weeks that all the folks who those reappointments have happened and occurred, and we can have a full slate of board and trustees to continue the good work. So thank you, everybody who have put that work together, and thanks to the governor and his team for expediting the process so that we can continue to have a great full slate of trustees. Any questions on board reappointments? Okay, great. Item 2D is committee composition. And so this is one of our calendar tasks that we have every year. And it's really around, how do we ensure that we're continuing to build pipeline for potential board members. Michelle, anything in particular you want to make sure we accomplish as part of this item?
A reminder to all that what I will do is I will be sending you a Google Doc that you can fill out at your convenience. And this will be an opportunity for you to provide us with some information about potential opportunity to build this pipeline for additional board members to join at some point, so for consideration.
And this is what we've done in the past is, we've collected some names. I know Lil and the foundation have been great in providing some recommendations as well. It is the governor's selection at the end of the day for trustees. And at times he asks for our thoughts on some great URI alums or others that we think will be great for the board. So we like to have those at the ready should the governor and his team ask for that. So this is what that process starts now. And I know we're talking about reappointments and finishing those, but believe it or not, that process starts now for us to make sure that we have a great continued pipeline. All right, anything else on that item, Michelle?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Item E is around the board retreat. So the board retreat is slated for June 28th, 2024. And we use this time every year to kind of ideate on things that we would like to cover during the board retreat. So for folks who have not done a board retreat with us, it typically is around a half a day. We have a traditional board meeting for a few hours because especially around that time of year, it's necessary for us to have some voting and some governing that needs to be done. And then we spend usually part of the afternoon together talking about what we want to continue to do for the board. This is when the goals conversation came about last year. And so we really would love any thoughts from this group on what we would like to do together. I know I'll start I'm a proponent of being together. And so I know the night before we normally do something fun where we could be together and get to know each other better. And so I know we got rave reviews when we did a kind of a, not a scavenger hunt, but a kind of a tour of the campus with some students, and maybe got a little competitive about it. And so something like that was definitely well received, but want to get your thoughts on things that we want to make sure we cover during this retreat in June. Any thoughts?
Madam Chair, if I could, one thought that came to mind was, another board that I sit on today, what they do is they bring other organizations such as yours, so other universities perhaps, or someone, can come and sort of speak to us around one thing that they're doing that's pretty amazing that maybe we should be looking at, or an area that we feel that we need more help on. I'm not sure if that even makes any sense, but, getting best practices from other organizations like us. Wasn't sure if that's something that would make sense for a retreat or not. I don't know, just wanted to throw it out there.
That's great, thank you. Any topics or anything we want to like dig in and spend a little bit more time on as a board? Joe?
This could make me the skunk at the garden party, but I just know the things that are going on in healthcare right now. When you look at a state of 1 million people and you have competing healthcare delivery systems and not enough physicians, and you got to find a way to collaborate. I think, and I recognize that different, the 3 different systems, the 3 different education units or systems that we have all have their own role. But I just sense, and I know from having to go through the education committee,
Yeah.
we are looking for ways to collaborate in an intelligent way and to align properly. And I know that that's actually being very successfully done at CCRI. And I just wonder if, to Jay's point, if there is a value in having a presence, if this became a topic of conversation with the other 2 institutions. I just wonder.
That's good. That's great. Thank you, Joe. Any other thoughts for our retreat? Bob?
And not to be a skunk at the lawn party, unfortunately, I'm not going to be there, but I think there's a relatively important issue that we should be discussing. I know Abby has been working on this constantly since she's been in her position, but that is emergency management, active shooter concept, and the various things that are going on, not only on campus, but with the neighboring communities, Narragansett, South Kingstown, North Kingstown, et cetera, as well as the state police, FBI, and other agencies. I just think the public needs to know that we're working all the time on improving cooperation, collaboration with other agencies, as well as the other 2 institutions.
That's great. Yeah, I just saw the announcement of the advisory group too, so that's great.
Courtney, I would say that we could take a look at the strategic plan and pull out some things that that we'll be working on, like in the shorter term, that might be good for the board to get a deeper understanding of. So it could be, we just got in the governor's budget, 80 million towards the life sciences building.
Yep.
And maybe that ties into what Joe is saying. But maybe understanding more deeply, like, what does that mean? What are we building? Why is that the opportunity? Like, I would, maybe we just go back and look at the plan.
Yep.
And figure out, like, what are the things that that are going to be in front of the board strategically and like get a deeper understanding. We are going to talk about something that Joe raised. We're going to talk about that at the board meeting in executive session. So it might be timely in June to say, okay, let's take a really deep dive so we understand what the heck we're potentially embarking on here. So let's
Yeah, I like
take a
that.
look at the vision and figure out like what's coming at us sooner versus later that we should really understand.
That's great. Yeah, and that's really what the retreat is used for, right? Is deeper dives where we can, and time together is the two, I think, biggest opportunities. So that's great. Good.
But to Jay's point, I would also say it's also and you're good at leading this. It's also a time to reflect on our practices.
Yep.
And whether we're, what can we be effective at or more effective at, what's not working.
Yep.
So if there's an opportunity to bring in something about that, I think that's always good too.
Yep. Good. All right, thank you. If there's any other ideas, we're going to be over the course of the next couple of weeks really honing it in and starting to think through what an agenda would look like. And so please feel free to submit your thoughts in any way possible, any way that you want to. Jay, myself, we're happy to hear them out. So thank you. All right. Item 2F, we have a number of policies to discuss today. And so one is around, and this is something that we review once a year. And so want to thank Dan for keeping us in check and on schedule on a routine basis. But this is our academic year 2024 URI Board of Trustees policy list and anticipated review schedule update. So Dan, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you. So in every September, I update this committee with sort of an estimate of the policies that we think are going to come in front of this committee for this academic year. So one thing that's important, the reason I'm here today is for an update, because I mentioned in September that the university's administrative policy committee was considering a recommendation to extend the review period for all policies. And I noted then that if this happens, the schedule that you received in September would change. So in September 26th, the Administrative Policy Committee, or APC as we call it, they determined that shifting to a 5-year renewal window for policies was reasonable, and this renewal window would be retroactive to current policies. So that obviously changes the schedule that was presented. So that's why I wanted to come today to give you the new schedule of policies likely to pass through this committee in this academic year. And from the attachment that was sent, you'll see the number of policies was significantly reduced. Just to give you some detail, given the information you'll hear from Carol Larson in a minute about the Title IX regulations, we may or may not see the sexual misconduct and non-discrimination policies this year. Just when I say this year, I'm talking academic year, right? So they may flow into September, which is technically next year. We do expect updates to 3 policies this year. One is the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees policy on policies that's currently being redrafted and updated. Then the intellectual property policy and the conflict of interest in research policies. Those 2 policies are presently with faculty committees and the Office of the Vice President for Research for their updates. So that's sort of the quick overview to see the change.
And if I may just add one point that I think is important, the Administrative Policy Committee, as Dan mentioned, approved this extension of review, but that does not mean that any member of that committee or any constituent on campus can't raise and say, a federal regulation changed, or we think there's a need to revisit this policy. So we can certainly revisit a policy if the need arises, but the 5-year would be standard if no need comes to the fore. So. Right,
and for example, the intellectual property policy and conflict of interest in research are examples of that. And so that's why they're currently under review. Thanks, Abby. That's very important.
That's great. Thank you. Any questions for Dan? All right. Okay. Thank you, Dan, so much. Item 2F 2 is an update on Title IX regulations. And Kara, it has been a journey from the sounds of it. Would you share an update?
Yeah, so the timeframe has been pushed back again. The Department of Education had initially been shooting for October. They didn't make their October self-imposed timeline. So then the best guess was going to be March next month. It's now apparent that that is not going to be met, although the Department of Education has taken the next step in the process. They have submitted the final rules to the Office of Information Regulatory Affairs, OIRA, within the Office of Management Budget, which reviews and provides feedback before they then get transmitted back to the Department of Education to accept the feedback and incorporate any feedback, and then publish the final regulation. So we're looking now at May, given that OIRA usually takes around 2 months, 60 to 90 days to do their review. So we're looking probably May, maybe June 1st, with an implementation date of mid-August. One thing that all Title IX practitioners, though, are very concerned about with this new time frame is under the Congressional Review Act, Congress has to review all new regulations, and they have to do it within 60 days of sine die. So if sine die is in August, they are not going to make it, which then puts those regulations into what's called the clawback period, allowing a new incoming administration to simply cancel them. So everyone is kind of on pins and needles about going through the process of maybe implementing these whole new regulations, having it subject to clawback because of Congress doesn't have enough time to do their review. And then if there's a change in administration, having them simply canceled in next January and the current regulations reinstated. So there could be a lot of work, and then there could be a complete turnaround, but all of that remains to be seen. There's no way to even guess as to what will happen there.
Between that and the FAFSA, I feel like we're being, it's definitely an adventure.
Yes.
Thank you, Kara. Any questions for Kara? Obviously, it goes without saying, Kara, but I'll say it anyway. If there's a necessity for us as a governance committee to have a special meeting or whatever is necessary for you to meet timelines, understanding that timelines are not our own right now, just let us know. We're happy to support you.
Great. Thank you very much.
You got it. All right, next item is 2F3, which is a review of the policy on employee recruitment, selection, and hiring. And that is Anne-Marie Coleman and Dan Muse.
Thank you very much. I can kick this off, and Anne-Marie, please chime in at any moment. I'd like to describe a little bit about this policy. This is the first time that this committee has seen this policy, and it's a new policy for the university in that this is a single policy that coordinates and aggregates multiple policies and procedures and practices regarding hiring across the university. And I'll tell you a little bit about the background of how this was developed. Abby Ryder, former VP Abby Ryder, pulled together a human resources policy work group, and that group was going to look at all of the human resources policies to sort of update them and to kind of pull some of them together so that we can centralize them. And this was an ad hoc team that she pulled together in winter of 2023. Just so you know who was on that, it was former VP Abby Ryder. I was on it, Abby Benson as the Chief of Staff to the President, Ellen Reynolds, Vice President for Student Affairs, Anne-Marie Coleman, AVP for Human Resources. Sean Rogers was on it. At that time, he was the VP for Community Equity and Diversity. Alyssa Boss, our General Counsel. Mike Rice, who at the time was the President of the Faculty Senate of the Executive Committee. Matt Boda, who's the Vice Provost for Academic Personnel and Budget. And then Dorka P. Smalley is the Director of the Office of Equal Opportunity. So this policy was drafted over a number of months, and we had, I can't remember, it was weekly or bi-weekly meetings. We had a lot of meetings over many months in the winter and spring to pull this policy together. And you can see as you reviewed it that it's quite a substantial policy. It was presented to the Administrative Policy Committee 5 separate times. And that's not an insignificant number because most policies pass through the APC 2 times. In addition, this policy was posted for URI community comments for 2 weeks in December, and there were multiple notifications in Rhody Today, targeted emails announcing the availability of the policy for comment to the Faculty Senate Executive Committee and other stakeholders. So we really reached out to try to make sure people had the opportunity to look at this policy. So what you're seeing here now, as I said, is this amalgamation, kind of centralization of all the current policies, procedures, and practices around hiring from across the university. So it's important to note that this policy covers all personnel at the university. So that's faculty, classified staff, non-classified staff, temporary hires, graduate students, et cetera. And it's meant to be a single policy that controls employee selection and hiring. There's a few changes to current policy and practice in this policy I want to point out. In general, there's not a lot of changes to our current policy and practices. So I say it's a new policy, but really what we have done is pulled together information from across the university into one place. But I want to go through some of the changes because I think that's significant to know. We have created a new role for hiring, which is called a hiring manager. And this hiring manager is the university employee who's responsible for the selection and hiring of new employees. These hiring managers have supervisory authority, and there are certain people at the university. They're the president, the provost, direct reports to the president or the provost, their direct reports, or principal investigators for positions with sponsor awards or third-party funds under their control. A couple other new things we've done is we have some clarifications around advertising. We're now requiring to advertise non-classified positions outside the university. It also clarifies the concept of required minimum qualifications. There's no change to it. It's that we've codified current practices on how we interpret these rules. A good example for that would be like when someone is allowed to complete a qualification post-hire, right? A PhD might be able to complete their PhD or receive it 6 months after the hire would be one example. We have a new exemption for the requirement of the use of search committees, not searches, but search committees for non-classified staff under a particular grade. And that's a new change for the university. We also are requiring training now for search committee members every 2 years, and that includes hiring managers. And there's some clarification on exemptions and special conditions. These are mainly around issues of like an annual raise. When you're hired, are you eligible for an annual raise? And the availability of things like relocation support. We have a new policy on relocation support, but now that information must be inside the appointment letter. There's another section on executive search firms, how they're accessed, who's responsible, another section on acting and interim appointments, and we've strengthened language throughout noting who's responsible for the expenses of searches. So I just think it's important to know that there are some changes here, but primarily there's not an overall reworking of the hiring process in any way. Really, we've strengthened it through all of this. One thing I do want to point out, there's an exception in this policy, and the policy does not apply to the university president. And I think I can stop there. There's a number of policies that will be reworked or retired that are noted at the end of this policy. If you really want to go into the weeds on this, I won't list them, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and Anne Marie is here as well.
Thanks, Dan. Anne Marie, anything you want to add before we open it up?
No, any questions? Be happy to answer.
Great. Any questions from the committee? All right. Sounds like it was a big effort and lots of folks involved in the process, and streamlining multiple policies is a good thing. So
it was a significant effort. I can attest to that.
You can definitely tell. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Anne Marie. All right, moving to Charles Fogarty's favorite item, item number 3, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn, Charlie Fogarty?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second? Nobody else wants to adjourn? No one?
I'll
All
second
right,
it.
Bob Wade. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Bob. I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any
Yes.
opposed? Any abstentions? The motion to adjourn is approved. The next meeting of the Governance Committee is scheduled for April 8th, 2024. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.